Teachers of Reddit, what's the funniest thing a student has done in your class that you know you shouldn't have laughed at, but you did? If you've ever seen the Friday the 13th movies, you know there's a certain noise whenever the killer is coming around. It's like tsh tsh tsh. I teach middle school. We had a very annoying disruptive student last year. He made it very difficult to teach his class and just tried to make my life heck. One day he was looking in my classroom window while I was teaching a different class, and someone very quietly in the back of the room makes the tsh tsh tsh. I cracked up. Couldn't help it, but it just completely exemplified that entire school year. I was teaching 7th grade boys reproductive health. In the video they watch, there is a drawing of an erect penis. I've watched the movie several times before, and every time, the boys shut up and there is an uncomfortable silence. This particular time, when the drawing comes up on the screen, a boy lets out a huge fart. Usually in class when that happens, everyone chuckles and we move on. But this time, no one says a word. They were too fixated on the erect penis they didn't even hear the fart. I couldn't help it, so I started laughing. When we were learning reproductive health in 8th grade, the teacher said something where the answer should have been vagina. One kid raises his hand and replies the cave of wonders. The whole class including the teacher lost it. I teach elementary school, and just this week during PE one of my students fell and scraped his knee. I told him to go to the bathroom and clean it off. It wasn't too bad. No nurse needed. He comes back a little while later with what he called war paint on his face. He had smeared his blood in his face in a war paint fashion. I laughed and told him he now needed to go to the nurse to get that cleaned off his face. You could see the devastation in his face. Devastation literally on his face. I had an 8th grader who clearly thought of himself as a class clown, only without the part where other students find him funny. Think Richie in it. Inappropriate jokes, making faces at people, just generally trying way too hard to get a laugh out of people and not usually succeeding. One day he gets pulled out of my class by the principal for some behavior issue, and as he's walking to the door he's mugging for the class. See you later, loser's exaggerated swaggering walk, turning to make a face at the class as he goes, and walks clear into the half-open door. Only time I think that kid ever succeeded in making the class bust up laughing. I had to turn around and face the board so they wouldn't see me laughing too. What if he walked into that door on purpose? A true mastermind of comedy, flipping the expectations of others. In college I was student teaching, always the only male in my classes. I got assigned to work in my friend's mother's classroom. She has an amazing sense of humor. There was a preschooler who went to the bathroom and peed a little on his pants. She pulled him aside and asked what happened. He yelled, "I didn't do it, my penis did it." I laughed so hard I had to leave the classroom and stand in the hallway for 10 minutes to compose myself. Kid was probably so sincere too. Bless his heart. I teach English to kids in China. One kid I had was trying to practice saying boy girl. He looked at me and said you are a boy before I could even respond. His mother starts frantically yelling in the background, girl say girl. He then said, "I'm sorry teacher, you are a girl." Took everything in me not to laugh. I have a ton of other stories, such as the kid who, for the life of him, could not pronounce the name Frank and was unknowingly saying the F word instead, but that one always stuck out as being one of the few that I almost lost it in giggles. Former teacher here. I have to. 1. I was teaching a class of year 10 students. I taught them the previous term after their original teacher had gone on stress leave and they'd been trying to get rid of me too. I had the misfortune of being quite unwell with a chest infection. I had a bad coughing fit and one of the boys looked at me and said, "Die quietly." The class went dead silent until I started laughing. 2. One of the girls in my year 11 class the following year threw an exercise book at me, expecting that I'd catch it, but she didn't warn me and as a result it hit me, well open, in the face. I was surprised but I laughed and she was extremely apologetic. Die quietly. Miss probably would have sent me to the hospital. I teach English to 7th grade Vietnamese kids. At the beginning of class one student tapped me on the shoulder and simply wrote, "What mean is frick?" on the board. Had to try my best to not pee myself laughing. Teaching 5-year-old sex ed. This is basically privacy, saying no if you don't like something and learning the proper names for body parts. I had a whole spiel about how it's fine to use family names for your private parts at home, but you should know the proper medical names in case you have to talk to a doctor. This has been a real issue, especially for girls in child abuse cases where it seems a child had tried to disclose but they don't have the language to describe what has happened. It's a bit less of an issue for boys, as here in the UK Willy is pretty much universally accepted as a child name for a penis. I digress. After the whole class talk, their activity was to label a drawing of a person with all the body parts they knew, including the private parts we had just learned. I went over to one group and they had added breasts to their drawing with the label boobies. They were all a bit nervous and embarrassed, as they always are in this lesson. The whole point is to get them feeling a bit more comfortable with these discussions, so in my best teacher voice I said that was really good thinking and they were very clever for realizing there was another private body part that we hadn't talked about yet. However, there was another proper medical name they could use, and did anyone know what it was? It was He shrieked at the top of his voice. I tried so hard to keep a straight face, because he was so pleased with himself for knowing an answer, but I'm afraid I cracked up. I had to talk to a colleague outside of the classroom for a second. When I came back in, someone had written poop on my desk. Out of all the replies, this one made me laugh the most, God bless. Teaching high school, I had a desk graffiti artist that I hadn't caught yet. It was in the back of the room and usually kids would have books and such on top of it, so I wouldn't find it until later in the day. I don't remember what the early drawings were, but little doodles and whatnot. Nothing crazy, and not enough of an annoyance for me to put too much effort into catching the culprit. Until one day, right at the beginning of class, a kid raises her hand and goes, Miss, someone drew on my desk, and I go back there to look. It's a giant complex Illuminati themed drawing, complete with the pyramid and all-seeing eye, pentagrams, whatever else you can possibly think of. It covered the entire desk. It was so ridiculous I started laughing so hard. I was literally crying from laughing. And then this other kid, big football jock type, shows up late with a pass and just sees me crying in the back and is like, what happened? Did they do something to you? Which just made me laugh harder. The culprit turned out to be this kid I never would have guessed. Super nice kid, star student and athlete, and clearly secretly good at art. Rather than write him up, I just asked him to clean desks after school for a day. Still one of my favorite students ever. As a side note, I reported football player because when I looked at his pass I saw it was in his handwriting, and when he tried to sign his guidance counselor's name, in terrible cursive, he spelled it wrong. Turns out he had stolen a pad of passes and would write them for himself, his friends. That was a funny group. I had a lot of fun teaching them even though they drove me nuts. Read an entire page out of the science book about habitats, niches, communities, saying orgasm instead of organism, repeatedly. I was doing okay until I caught the eye of the classroom aide, and then I lost it and had to step into the hallway for a minute. In 5th grade I did a presentation saying we lived in a condom. We were in a condo. Mrs. Lampkin, thanks for clearing that up after class. Does a story my son's former preschool teacher told me about my son count? If so, here goes. I was dropping him off and his preschool teacher pulls me aside. We were going over the letter D yesterday and I asked if anyone knew any words that started with D. Do you know what your son said? I started racking my brain for anything inappropriate that starts with D, but nothing would prepare me for what she said. He went dildo. It has 2 D's. I wanted to die right there, but his teacher was cracking up. It took me everything not to laugh right there. She told me. I just nodded and asked if anyone else knew another word. I still see her every morning at drop-off. My son just started pre-K, and she will still bring it up and giggle. Still trying to figure out where he got dildo from 2 years later. Once I said dildo instead of armadillo. A student of mine, high school senior, was being incredibly obnoxious and ignorant towards another student in class. I told him to basically sit down and shut up or else go to the headmaster's office. When he went to sit down, the chair broke and he went down like a sack of bricks. All I remember is 2 feet flailing around in the air. It took me a good 10 minutes to stop laughing. During my 6th form chemistry exam, about 5 minutes after the test began, a rather large guy who had been an annoying dong to me and my friends for years collapsed through his chair and fell flat on his back. You could see the effort being made to not laugh on everyone in the room's face. I normally teach high school, but in my first year I taught grade 8s. I had them introduce themselves and tell me their favorite animal. One boy gets up, very seriously, and say, "My snake paws my trouser snake." I spun around so fast to hide my laughter, but I don't think I was successful. It was all in the delivery. Ha, got him. Working in a boarding school, I had dorm duties in the morning. Basically I had to check kids off as they left, hand out some meds and generally make sure they got off to a good start of the day. One of the male students, a senior, walked into the common area where I was on his way out the door with no pants. I asked him if he was forgetting anything. Nope, got my book bag. Out the door he went, and in a minute or so came rushing back in. I was dying laughing. He was too. Good kid with a great sense of humor. I think I've been this kid at least twice recently. Personal, social, health education, blockbuster style game. What P is a word for a non-sexual relationship, without skipping a beat. Pointless, miss. I had to read this like 5 times before I understood what the frick you were trying to say. Not a teacher, but one who made the teacher laugh. So my old school used to have this thing called muck-up day. It was only for the grade 12 students who were leaving school that year. However, before my year could do it, we got a new vice principal who apparently had a cactus shoved up his ass cause he banned muck-up day. So when it came around to being what should have been our turn, we did covered ops pranks. Now me and my friends decided to prank the really cool science teacher. He drove the most banged up pose car ever. The mirror was held on by duct tape. It had holes in the panel work, so we fixed it by cling wrapping it. He came out mid-prank, and he didn't laugh, but he suggested should have filled it with expanding foam as well. See, cool teacher. Unfortunately for us, the butthole VP also came at that time and got cross. See, another group of students had put the school up for sale, as in they wandered around and stole a bunch of for sale signs from various houses, all the same real estate brand, and hung them on the school fences and boundaries. VP, too stupid lazy to check if we actually did it, decided to blame us and sent us to take them down. Cool science teacher put on teacher mode and firmly told us to do it as well and to do something about his car. Then both left. So we took down the signs and taped them to his car. When he came back out, he burst out laughing. Finally, a question I can answer. I had a student that was more than chubby, and it didn't bother him at all. He would joke about it with his classmates and himself all the time. He was one of the funniest, most liked kids in the class. Think comedian Gabriel Iglesias. One day, they were in a test and I noticed he has whispering to another student. I tell him to be quiet, and he goes back to his exam. Second time, I tell him to be quiet again. By the third time, I was ready to take away their tests. Then, out of nowhere, this other student, his friend, turns around, looks at him and screams, "Please shut up, fat hamburger boy," which he quickly responded, "You shut up, stick boy," not as an insult, but as a playful banter. Everyone in the class started laughing, including both kids, and I guess it was the contrast of the silence in the room, but I couldn't hold it. I turned around and looked at the blackboard so the students wouldn't see me giggling. That was my one moment of unprofessionalism in my entire teaching career. And as you were facing the blackboard, everyone cheated as per the plan. I was reading a Halloween story to a group of kindergartners. When I got to the scary part, I heard a little voice from the circle. Dun dun dun. Jesus Christ, was this my kid, because this is his jam. Had a student tell another student, "Yo, you mad stupid, you in special ed." Student replies, "You in the same class as me, my wife's class." One kid calls another kid fat. Somebody yells, "Who you calling fat? Look at your titties. We both teach special ed, self-contain. Do we work together?" Years ago when I taught first grade, I had a little boy with high-functioning autism in my class. He was an absolutely amazing kid, and is now an absolutely amazing adult. But when he got pee off, he would fire people. Picture this little tiny tousled, blonde-haired kid with thick glasses and a bit of a lisp standing there in front of an adult and saying, "That's it, I've had enough. You're fired." In the time I knew him, he fired me multiple times, the principal, his mom, his dad, the janitor, the lunch lady, etc. I've always thought it would feel like quite a bit of relief if every time people pee me off, I could inconsequentially fire them. I work in behavioral health and one of my classes has an 18-year-old with high-functioning autism. He likes to break up when he's upset. Redacted. You know, this isn't really working out right now. I'm gonna take space. It isn't me, it's you. A couple middle school boys started using a British accent and I can't remember what led to this particular exchange, but one ended with "That's quite rubbish." Another class, the kids started laughing. It was a hands-on activity, so lots of talking and laughing, and then this kid starts wheezing, snorting, laughing. I didn't know that sound was possible kind of noise. Pulls his shirt over his face to muffle the sound. I think the whole room lost it. I excused him, take a break and get his composure. He snorted, wheezed, laughed out the door. Makes me laugh thinking about it. PE teacher here. Playing a game of rugby, someone does a clearance kick so high and so deep into the opposition's half. Little guy is running back to get it but loses sight of the ball as it's so high but keeps on running. The ball lands about 10 feet away from him and, because of the shape of a rugby ball, bounces straight into his head and takes him tight out. He was fine. The fact he had no idea where it was and the perfection of the bounce was pretty funny. Not a teacher, but a witness to this. I was an awful student and constantly backchatted the teachers. One day my science teacher had had enough of me, so walked me to the head teacher's office. I was walking in a huff with my arms folded when we got to 4 steps. I took 1 step and fell flat on my smug face. She asked me if I was okay while trying not to laugh. I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." Spit, 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 spit. I was teaching a general psychology class to high school students and we were talking about adolescent psychology. I had to talk about sexual maturation and said, "Penis." The class giggled and I said, "Penis, penis, penis, vagina, vagina, vagina." I pointed to the big football jock and said, "He has a penis and I have a vagina." He coyly put his finger to his mouth and said, "Or do I?" Myself and the rest of the class laughed a solid 5 minutes. LOL, what the frick. In Taiwan, some kids spilled their pencil box on the floor, and the sound that cut through the subsequent silence was a cartoon wah. Never heard it before, and I couldn't contain myself. I was an instructor trainer at a community college for a time. Kid who is perpetually late comes in halfway through class. I hand him his assignment sheet and notice a familiar odor. I lean in to tell him he reeks of weed. He says, "Oh, thanks," and takes a seat. God, what I wouldn't give to have that kind of unflappable cool back in college or even now. Teaching 8th grade US history, and on curriculum showcase night, students are giving speeches about significant politicians. This super innocent, sweet girl gets up to talk about Shirley Chisholm but has somehow decided to pronounce the CH as a hard JCH sound. Hardest time I ever had not laughing. There were grown butt dads in the audience who had tears of laughter running down their faces. Tried my best to pronounce it carefully and clearly the next day in class, but I'm pretty sure it was lost on all the girls in the class. The boys just sat there with grins the whole time. Still cracks me up 10 years later. I don't get it. Not a school teacher, but I teach swimming lessons. I was training a new instructor with preschoolers and one of the boys had a bit of a crush on her. The one day he straight up said to the trainee, "Mrs. Teacher, I think we were meant to be together. Can I kiss you on the lips?" The look on her face was priceless and I died laughing for a solid 5 minutes. Took a while to compose myself and continued teaching. I'm a lifeguard swim instructor too and the preschool kids are hilarious. One time I was handing the kids these toy boats to practice blowing bubbles with for a game, and this one 4-year-old boy says, "I don't want this lame butt boat." Not a teacher, but I made my 9th grade English teacher laugh her butt off one morning. I had to have 3 bunionectomies my freshman year. I was doped up pretty much that whole year on hydrocodone. Like I had to take 2 every few hours. It's amazing I'm not an addict, haha. Anyways, that first morning I came back to school, I was sitting in class high as a kite. My whole left side of my face was droopy and I drooled all over my desk. And I sat in the front. So while she's trying to lecture, she has to stare at this drugged up kid. She would hide her face behind her papers so I wouldn't see her cry laughing. Unfortunately though, at the end of the year her and her husband were in a motorcycle accident and she passed away. Probably the most sad school year of my school life. I still tear up thinking about her. She was amazing. R.I.P. Mrs. Ross. Well, that took an unexpected turn. R.I.P. We read a story in my 5th grade class about an octopus. One of boys exclaimed, "I wouldn't want to see one of those. Its testicles, meaning tentacles, coming out to grab you and everything." I couldn't stop laughing. I teach kindergarten. A few weeks ago a student accidentally ripped his book and I hear him singing to himself softly while looking forlornly at the ripped page. "Hello darkness, my old friend." On a get to know you sheet of a middle school girl. Who do you look up to and why? David Beckham. I love the smell of his colon. I had told them I'd read these out loud in class for people to guess who each one was. Once I read that line I couldn't finish. My year 5, 9, 10 years old class had a space day event last year to get the kids excited about science. At one point the astronauts presenting it brought out a box and told the kids they had a real alien frozen inside it. One particularly loud and disruptive kid shouts out, "Is it Donald Trump?" which got a few of the adults to smile, but mainly got him a warning to calm down and stop shouting out. The astronauts then opened the box to show the kids the alien and, surprise surprise, the box was empty. As soon as he saw the empty box, the disruptive kid immediately screamed fake news at the top of his lungs, and all the adults in the room mysteriously broke out into coughing fits. I had a student trying desperately to spell the word egg. The problem was this student kept sounding out the E as being an I. When I tried helping him really sound out the medial vowel, he really just kept thinking it was an I. So he started loudly spelling deck as D-I-C-K over and over again. I just couldn't contain myself because he kept insisting on it. My door was open and I was very concerned administration would walk by and wonder what exactly I was teaching. I'm an infant toddler teacher. One time a 3-year-old was playing in the play kitchen alone. A peer came over and started playing with him. He looked at the kid and shouted, "Get the frick out of the kitchen." Not funny. Obviously he heard it at home. But a few days later he said crap when he fell. I laughed and he looked at me and smiled. Later at the lunch table he looked right at me and said, "You want to know what my mom says?" whilst smiling a crap eating grin. I told him no, but had to leave class to go laugh. Well, I'm not the teacher, but on 9/11 our school board decided to put Jenga games in every class for 3rd period. The idea of it was that every Jenga piece had a number on it which corresponded to a question we had to answer on piece of paper. This was great for getting to know all the new people we would spend the year with. However, the teacher, who is a 50-year-old man, started laughing for about 10 minutes straight when someone asked him why we were playing Jenga on 9/11. Someone didn't think that one through. I taught a class many years ago made up of students at least 2 grade levels behind their peers. They were in 7th grade. It was to help build reading skills. I was tough on them, but fair. One girl would not follow directions, was constantly off task, etc. One day, she was mad at what happened in class, and boldly states, "You must not like me because I'm black." Side note, everyone worked hard, except her. I burst out laughing, almost falling over. All the kids either smirked at her or looked like she had 3 heads. I then told her to look around. I couldn't help but bring it to her attention. Everyone in the room is black. Then the class erupted in laughter. I had fewer issues after that day. I have a boy in my 7th grade class who was off his ADHD medication. He usually is pretty good about his verbal filter, but this was not one of those days. The class got on the subject of tact, so I was trying to teach them with an example. I said, "Tact is like when I ask my husband if I look fat in a dress. He tells me number." The boy, even though it's not true, there was a moment of silence when everybody's jaw dropped. Then one of the boys across the room yelled, "Dude, you can't say that," and everybody began to lose it. I gave the boy a stern look, then began to chuckle to let him know all was well. I was going over a test question that asked, explain in terms of osmosis why a raisin placed into a cup of pure water will puff up over time. A student's face turned to this look of realization and her eyes widened. She blurted out, "Oh my god, is that how they make grapes?" I couldn't help it. I laughed so hard. I recently did an icebreaker in my sports and entertainment marketing class. Share with the class your favorite athlete and entertainer. One of my students told the class his favorite entertainer was Mia Khalifa. It took everything in my power not to start laughing. I also was very confused on what to do. If I do nothing, he gets away with it. If I call him out, all my students know I watch P. Second one shouldn't be that bad, but a bunch of high schoolers can get really annoying with that info, haha. I was observing in a classroom during my student teaching. It was a French lesson. After explaining the assignment, she finishes with, "Does everyone understand? Are all our light bulbs on?" The students nod and get straight to work, except for this one kid, who was known for not always being the brightest, shoots his hand up in the air saying, "My light bulb is not on." I died of laughter. Previous high school Spanish teacher. We were maybe a quarter of the way through the school year and focusing on basics such as, I'm wearing, I like, I am XX years old. I had my class, over 80% guys, do a speed dating scenario. 2 minutes per person to describe likes, dislikes, interests and age. I got the usual, "Man, this is gay," from almost all students. To make it more fun, during review of the terms, I told them the difference between tengo quinsanos, I am 15 yo, and tengo quinsanos, I have 15 anuses. I got a round of laughter. Some students would specifically say anos, anuses, but I knew they knew the difference, and they would never forget. Side note, nothing like complaining about speed dating being gay and then telling another dude you have 15 anuses. Fast forward to the few days before graduation. The principal, a few other teachers, and I were in charge of a group of kids that didn't go on a field trip. One of my problem students turned, looked at me, and loudly said, "Mr. MG 13449. How do you say buttholes again? Remember you taught us that, FML." Had a small 8th grade clown sing "Come Take a Ride" on my big black tractor, full country accent and all. I turn around at light speed and give him the "what the heck" look. He gets worried that he's in trouble and his friends see the interaction. They come to his rescue. "Miss, it's a real song. Miss, you don't know that song," etc. Then, like out of a 60s musical, the entire class starts singing this stupid song to me as proof that it's real, but none of them ever use the word green. I lost it. Every teacher, if they are great, gets one Dead Poets Society moment where all the students work together to show solidarity, and they wasted yours on covering up the class clown's double entendre. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.